was a seeker, but didn't know what he was seeking and didn't know his spirituality. And I grew up in a place related to you, only it was called New York. And it was a place that I wanted to leave. But I didn't know there's a teaching in India I love to share. There's a teaching, famous old teaching in India called nete nete. Not this, not that. It's appropriate for the devotee, for the spiritual seeker to say, I know what it isn't, but I don't know what it is. And the path is to find out what it is. And what's the solution? The solution was given to us of the Wizard of Oz. You just tap your shoes together 3 times. You already had it. Well, why didn't you tell me earlier? Because you wouldn't have heard it any earlier. You weren't ready
for attention. How do astrology and the Enneagram help someone understand themselves without turning into another label or identity? Is that something that people can use?
Okay, so I don't do either. I definitely don't do astrology like most astrologers, and I do an Enneagram a little bit different too, though it's not so far apart. The idea here is that most astrology these days is disempowering. Is that you're stuck in a place that you're this and you're that, Pluto square this, Mars square that you're kind of stuck in a place. And it's like, I know that the astrologer says to you, I know, and you don't know, even though they don't use those words. And so it's incredibly empowering. Not only every day, it's not year by year, it's moment by moment is making the best choice. I stopped making choices. I stopped using my mind to make any decisions. I use it all in the gut. What do I feel? And when I make a choice from what I feel in the gut, then I don't have to second guess it because there's no logic to it.
I love that.
The logic is that it was what I felt. Yeah. And if it was wrong, then that's new information, not that anything's wrong, but if it was but it was right at the time, like again, we'll go back to relationship. Maybe that wasn't the best relationship, but I didn't know that before. Now I know it. So there's the value. Now you know. And when you fall for it again, well, you're going to fall for it again.
Welcome back to Little Wild Experiences, the podcast where we explore one question: what experiences shape who we become? I'm your host, Zara York. Today I'm joined by Indra Rinzler, author of Indra's Net, A Seeker's Guide to the Human Experience, spiritual guide, Vedic astrologer, Enneagram teacher, and world traveler. For more than 50 years, Indra has followed a spiritual path, and for 25 years, he has traveled the world. He now divides much of his time between Northern California and India, helping people move beyond their conditioned stories and live more fully in the present moment. When I asked Indra what single experience shaped him most, his answer caught my attention. There really wasn't just one. It has been more than 50 years of seeking, traveling, questioning, learning, and experiencing life. And that makes me wonder whether who we become is sometimes shaped, by one extraordinary moment, but by thousands of smaller ones accumulated over a lifetime. Indra, welcome to Little Wild Experiences. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you.
Well, thank you. I feel honored to be here too. I'm reminded of we used to talk about the overnight success, the 20-year overnight success that suddenly the actor becomes famous, and it's like, where have you been? Well, I've been, struggling for 20 years in order to be able to get to this moment. So which is the moment, I mean, it's a process. It's a chicken and egg process. Which comes first? Is it the getting the experience to be the overnight success all of a sudden after 20 years? Or is it the not giving up for the 20 years and to get there? And I don't think that there, I don't know that there, I'm not saying there's an answer, but the reality of, I think it's a process and the karma to have it like that. You've had that karma the whole time. You've just been waiting for the right moment.
Right. And I think, this happens, and I think in every situation, with relationships, in a professional life. I think a lot of people, I actually had a guest previously and we were talking about identity. And I think a lot of people struggle so much to find who they actually are. I think a lot of people are so, I would say maybe they depend their happiness or the state of being depends so much on society, and especially
Outward,
now.
outward stuff.
Yes, yes. And I want to ask you because you said after more than 50 years on a spiritual path, right? Do you still consider yourself a seeker? Is that something?
Absolutely. There's
Think
no completion. There's
how
there are levels of samadhi, there's levels of
mm,
samadhi, and the last one may be the connection to life, but still, even when you even on the astral plane there are levels.
yes.
So it never
How
ends.
it's yeah, I believe that. I mean, we're still learning, and I think
Absolutely.
it's a beautiful thing, and people focus so much, or the majority of people focus so much on the ending, that final goal, rather than enjoying it every day.
Yeah.
But how do people do that? That's the $1 million question.
How do they get to the end point? Is that what you're saying? Asking?
Well, it's like, yeah, because if we focus, and even me, I think at a certain point, even sometimes I'm still learning. We focus so much on that goal. We want to get somewhere, right? Whether it's
So the
professionally.
Okay, so you were bringing this up before with identity. You have to figure out
Mm,
who you are in order to be able to let it go. And so you need to know, you need to have the desire, you need the desire for the goal while it's not productive in the sense that it slows you down and you're not really you suffer with that.
mm-hmm,
That it's by attaining the goal and realizing that the relationship isn't really what you wanted, and the career and the money that you wanted, that doesn't really bring happiness either. And it's only
mm-hmm,
by achieving these on some level that you're able to realize that that isn't really what you want. And I have a phrase that I like to say is that there's this thought that you're either on the path or you aren't. I don't think that's the dichotomy. I think the dichotomy is that you're always on the path, but you don't always know it.
that's interesting.
And so
So that's
so the searching is, while it can be sophomoric, as soon as I have my guy or I have my girl, then I'll be happy. And we roll our eyes at the innocence of
hmm
youth. But the fact is that is the stage that we've all been in. And it's only by coming to have whatever it is you wanted to realize that it isn't really it. And I don't remember, about 20 years ago or something like that, 25 years ago, I remember wanting to know, what is it that lasts,
hmm
that the joy of a movie doesn't last, the intimacy doesn't last. You're ready for it again 20 minutes later, or a week later, or a month later, or a year later. The wonderful meal doesn't last. What is it that lasts? The love relationship gets stale,
mm,
reaches a
it's
middle
always a
place of,
rush.
yeah. So what is it that lasts? And the only thing that lasts is divinity, is giving your heart to God, is to live in divinity, and to realize, that it's God working through me, not me. Letting go of the idea of self, letting go of the ego, letting go of that look what I've done. There's no end to the look
Mm,
what I've done story. And
mm,
again, that is a destination on the path.
yes.
You
Mm.
have to get there, but then when you get there, you realize that that isn't really the station you're looking for.
That's interesting because I want to ask you more a little bit later. But before we get there, I want to start with you. So who was Indra before this spiritual journey began? Before all of this, or if this has been something you had lived during time.
Indra,
Right.
Indra wasn't before Indra was Indra. Indra was a seeker, but didn't know what he was seeking, and didn't know his spirituality. And I grew up in a place related to you, only it was called New York.
Yeah.
And it was a place that I wanted to leave. But I didn't know, there's a teaching in India I love to share. There's a teaching, famous old teaching in India called Nete Nete. Not this,
Mm,
not that. it's appropriate for the devotee, for the spiritual seeker to say, I know what it isn't, but I don't know what it is. And the path is to find out what it is. And what's the solution? The solution was given to us of the Wizard of Oz. You just tap your shoes together 3 times. You already had it. Well, why didn't you tell me earlier? Because you wouldn't have heard it any earlier. You weren't ready
pay
for
attention. Yeah.
You wouldn't pay attention.
We always get so distracted with other things that might not help us in the end. Were you searching for, what were you searching?
Searching for peace, searching for happiness. I grew up in Manhattan. I grew up particularly in the 50s, that it was where everybody wanted to be. It was it was the place to be. It was the goal, everything was happening before California. California kind of came to my mind, the mid 50s when Disney, The Wonderful World of Disney, or I forget what it was called at first, when Walt Disney came on and said, "Oh, I'm opening a park in California," like all of a sudden it switched to California. And then you may not know this, but the baseball teams, the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants moved to California, and there was a shift to California. Then the Beach Boys and the Flowers to San Francisco, and then the music scene. I mean, it was, it just went crazy from there. And so it was all California, where I do live in California. I was attracted to it, but New York was the place, but I didn't feel any of it. And I remember that there was a statistic, I assume this is still true, that the largest per capita of psychiatrists is in New York City, that people had success, and they had grabbed the golden ring. They were living in New York, but happiness wasn't part of it. And I think that it was in me to look for that, because I wasn't looking for success. I dropped out of the number 2 MBA program. And at the time, I lasted a quarter, and I didn't even, I didn't last much at that. I took 6 classes in graduate school, and I only finished 2 of them. I had 4 incompletes. I wasn't really into it anymore. And, one thing that happened, I was thinking about your question, is that both my parents died of natural causes before I turned 25. And that gave me a freedom to be able to let go of conditioning, to not have it in my face, to not assume your parents are still around, whatever they, when are you coming home? And, are you married yet? Or, whatever. I didn't really get any of that. And while there was, there is, I felt it in my 40s when I had kids, and, that when the kids, didn't have the kids, but when they were old enough, and the grandkids, they couldn't be grandkids to my grandparents. I could feel it a bit then, but I didn't feel disconnected from my parents to where that it was my own particular karma. I was raised rather independent, and my parents it was really important to my parents for me not to be sucked into the family stories, the conditioning. And so I already had that energy.
Right. So you think, consider it, right? It happened to me. I think I identify so much with that, because I left home when I was 15. And that's when I started living in New York. And I think I adopted a very strong identity, and I knew who I was at a very early, or I started building that at a very early age. Do you think that being independent like that and not having that safety net can influence to find yourself and to understand yourself better?
Well, yes, of course. And when you say safety net, that's you're leaking yourself, because you see it as a safety net. That isn't that what it may be, but other people would say that differently. They would use different words, that I could be what I want to be. But I would think that the reality that I found with my astrology and Enneagram work is that some people know who they are, and they're very independent and very strong. And many people, I wouldn't say as many, but many people don't know who they are, and they need to work on their identity. And it's not a waste of time, because once they figure out their identity, then they're much more able to let go of it. They're doing their work, figuring out their identity. But other people have a strong personality, a strong identity, and they can't look past the conditioning and getting stuck, and they have other problems, but that isn't their
Mm-hmm.
problem. They can be too arrogant, they can be too strong-willed, they can be don't tell me what to do. They can be, they can be lousy at work coworkers. So they can be bad partners, because they're not adaptable. They're not so adaptable, and they're kind of rigid in I know the way. They won't look at the map. They talk about guys won't look at the map. They'd rather get lost than look at the map for directions. So that assertiveness is everything is a plus and a minus. So it has it has capabilities in terms of being strong within yourself, but then it also has limitations because humility isn't so strong, and need to be in charge is too strong, and such. Not saying that any one is better than the other. It's all a conglomerate of the way life is.
And I think to find them, I mean, I don't know if you agree with this, but for me, it has worked personally. Do you think that to find yourself or to find your identity and be sure of who you are and what you want, I think being alone helps in a way. For me, has. I don't know if this is something you agree with. Like, for example, you had traveled the world, and
Yeah.
traveling, I think, helps us in a way to be in different environments where
Okay, I
you're
would
not
think.
familiar.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I would suggest getting rid of all generalizations. That
Mm.
that there are stages that at some times and for some people being alone is very important, but then for some times and some stages connecting in with others is very important. Sometimes traveling is wonderful, and traveling the world is wonderful, but I stay at home when I'm not traveling, and I don't hardly go to town anymore. And contrary to my personality, I kind of eat the same things every day, and like I'm not bored by it. But I'm old, and I got to a place where that I don't need the outer isn't satisfying. And I've done enough of it that it doesn't add much at this particular point, which isn't to say that maybe I should do a bit more, and if I should, then I probably will have the opportunity to. But
Right.
I've been in an inward cycle, and I've learned to be very happy with that. I met my wife just as I was about 3 months before I was going into a 19-year inward cycle. And she was strong. It's a Saturn cycle, 19-year Saturn cycle. And she's a very Saturn person. And
Hmm.
and so that inwardness and quiet and homebody, even though for a while I was traveling the world so much, even in that period. And I'm using that not so much homebody, but just as a term, was satisfying to her, and supportive of me, that she taught me how to be in that cycle and supported me in that cycle. And I like to say that she can't stand astrology, but that she was an
Hmm.
incredible help to my astrology
Hmm.
practice. Why? Because she believed in me. She empowered me to do what I wanted, but what I wanted didn't mean that she had any interest in that subject.
Yeah.
And
So,
we're not going to get that at 20 years old. We're not going to get it at 30 years old.
right, right,
It took into our 60s and 70s, and and there's no separation, but that doesn't mean we're together all the
right, right. Yeah, of course. I mean, my question is because do you think the traveling for you teach you more about other people or about yourself or
Well, I
both?
don't think there's yeah, it's both. I think that you can't love anybody until you love yourself. And so other people
Absolutely.
teach you how to grow, and the experiences. I learned that there's no difference between people. You have to show your passport at borders, but there is
Hmm.
no but the borders are man-made. And once you let go of that, I went into China the first time, and I remember that there was a little difficulty with the process. It was a little bit maybe here, maybe here, maybe here. And there was a little Chinese lady who spoke English, who was their counterperson, who was in charge. You know how you go through the passports here and you don't want to crack a smile. So I said to her, she was helping me, and I said, "You're so cute. I wish you could come with me." And she laughed.
Isn't that fun when you find yourself in this situation?
You'd think, here I am coming into China, and then I walked to the bus station to take a bus, and I got ripped off. That somebody said, "I'll help you to buy the ticket," and they ended up buying 2 tickets. And I went back to him and I said, "Wait a minute now. You ended up buying 2 tickets. Give me that ticket back." So I got the ticket back, and I sold it back to the lady. And I'm in China an hour, and so it just goes from there.
Right.
So yes, the traveling helps you to learn about yourself, and it tests you, but at the same time, it also expands you into other people. And so is the goal to go within, or is the goal to expand without? And the answer is it's the same, both.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
But we can call it expanding to the universe, or going to this to get grounded, or going to the center of the earth. And that's why ultimately everybody is right. Not that there is right or wrong, but ultimately everything is right. You need to do what you need to do at the time, and not and stop judging it, and stop make yourself small, or make somebody else small. And it's all trial and error. It's a continual lifetimes of trial and error until you
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah. I always say we don't make mistakes. Mistakes make us, right? I mean, I think that will
There
probably
is no, I
fit.
say there are no mistakes.
Okay, so you use astrology, and I want to know, because I think a lot of people have our misconceptions when it comes to astrology. So how do astrology and the Enneagram help someone understand themselves without turning into another label or identity? Is that something that people can use?
Okay, so I don't do either. I definitely don't do astrology like most astrologers, and I do an Enneagram a little bit different too, though it's not so far apart. But the idea here is that most astrology these days is disempowering. Is that you're stuck in a place that you're this and you're that, Pluto square this, Mars square that you're kind of stuck in a place. And it's like, I know that the astrologer says to you, I know, and you don't know, even though they don't use those words. And so it's incredibly empowering. And so the idea is to empower people. There are imprinting, the planets do imprint us. We have strong planets, which are skills and abilities, and we have planets that are weak, which are our obsessions and compulsions. Neither are good nor bad. They're not right or wrong. They just are. And so to understand where your blind spots are, where you need to grow, like your Mercury, it doesn't seem like your Mercury is weak, but let's just say your Mercury is weak. And so you get shy, and you don't communicate, and you bite your tongue rather than saying, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the reality of it is that if you want to stop suffering, and you want to find joy, and you want to find peace in your life, then you need to find your voice, if that's your particular planetary challenge. And so the astrology I do is just to empower people to understand their particular chart and karma, that it's a somehow that the moment we're born is perfect for us. And the chart, I did this with my own kids. You're watching the chart and waiting for the birth, and this is the perfect time, and look here, in 2 days this will be perfect, but son of a gun, you completely miss it. But when it happens, it's the perfect time. And that's the beginning of the teacher, to let go of our own ideas. But the astrology and the Enneagram 9 personality stories, learning our core triggers, learning what our skills and abilities based on our personality and where we have struggles, and is an incredible tool to understand ourselves, only to give us the information as to be able to see, to recognize our shadows, not being in the sun shadow, but creating, understanding our shadow, in order to be able to love that too, and to put the energy into into being, depending on your particular story, loving yourself as a 2 rather than helping everybody else. 5, to realize that you're adequate and capable. And as a 7, to live in the moment rather than going looking for greener pastures. That over the hill we're going to find. The next one is going to be the one.
Right.
That I got to keep moving, otherwise I feel my feelings. And so to be able to, these are tools that I found that are incredibly suited for this particular time in order to understand the neutrality that we live in, that are by the conditions based on the personality, and understanding that the personality is not who we are, it's who we think we are. We need to become who we really are, which is spirit and essence.
So I think, I don't know, it sounds to me, do you think peace comes from finally getting what we want, which it sounds to me now? You can, confirm that, or no longer needing certain things in order to feel complete.
Yeah, peace is the lack of all of the distractions. The peace is already there.
And I think, well, I'll include myself that I tend to confuse happiness with peace. I don't know if that's.
I think that's a logical confusion, that if I'm happy, then I'll be peaceful. But that isn't really true, because the happiness is lasting. He's here now, but now he just went out the door. And are you still happy? No. And then the
No.
peace leaves.
Still want more.
Yeah, you want more. That's right. Yeah. So that's what, I go back to my question, is what is it that is enough? What is it that never leaves, that is the satisfying feeling? And that's our true nature, which is to feel peaceful no matter what the situations, is to let go of all of the conditioning, and to let go of all the distractions and the needs, and to just what comes.
And it's a
On its
process,
own.
right, Indra?
Say that again?
It's a long It is a long process,
Well,
right?
absolutely. It's a total. It's a total every moment. It's not only every day. It's not year by year. It's moment by moment. Is making the best choice. I stopped making choices. I stopped using my mind to make any decisions. I use it all in the gut. What do I feel? And when I make a choice from what I feel in the gut, then I don't have to second guess it, because there's no logic to it.
I love that.
The logic is that it was what I felt.
Yeah.
And if it was wrong, then that's new information, not that anything's wrong, but if it was but it was right at the time, like again, we'll go back to relationships. Maybe that wasn't the best relationship, but I didn't know that before. Now I
Right.
know it. So there's
Now
the
you know.
value.
Uh-huh.
Now you know. And
Yeah.
when you fall
What are you
for it
gonna do with
again,
that?
well, you're going to fall for it again. But I tell the story that I have a very good friend who, when I first met her, she had 4 years overcoming this relationship that might have been a week or something. It wasn't necessarily even a long relationship, but it took her 4 years. But she told me 20 years later, she told me she saw a guy, and she could go through the whole story in her mind. And it was, I forget whether it was a day and a half or an hour and a half, but it was gone, She didn't have to say anything. Nothing had to happen, that she could see she was attracted, and he had the beautiful hands, and it was the setup, and it was, she did it in a day and a half, and he didn't know anything. And that is, I would call that growth.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, we make, what we call mistakes, but the idea is that we learn a lesson. That's how I see it.
That's right. And that's that is the spiritual path. That is divinity. That is God helping us, because we won't, once again, why didn't you tell me earlier, because you wouldn't have heard it, now you can understand it. So tap your heels together and go back to Kansas.
So don't do the same.
It was a very deep teaching for a book that was, I think, written in 1909. Woo! It's a very deep.
1909.
1909, The Wizard of Oz. Maybe 1913, something like that.
I think there is so much. I mean, like you said, it's a long process. And sometimes we struggle to start that process for some reason. I mean, why do you think people struggle so much to make that change or to make
They
that
have
first step.
expectations. They have expectations. They're scared. They don't want to hurt their parents. They don't want to do the wrong thing. They don't want to be the black sheep. There's 1,000 reasons, but it's they're on the path because they know better, but they're just not ready to live it yet. And that's okay. There's no fault in that.
Yeah, you had to be ready. So that's pretty
You
much.
you have to get ready to, when you start dating and it's like, oh, are we going to kiss or not? It can take energy, but 10 years later, it's a nothing burger, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
why do I ever worry about that? You spend days on your outfit for the night, and 10 years later, I don't even know what I'm wearing. Like it's not even a consideration. That's growth and change, and that is the spiritual path. It may not be spiritual, it may not be divinity, but it's coming into your own nature. It's coming into strength. It's believing in yourself. It's following your heart.
Yes, yes. And coming back to your book, how did this idea, how was it born? How do you come up with, let me just write it?
I did
Let me
by
just,
not coming up. I didn't come up with it.
you did it.
Well, I started. I started. I always thought I always wanted to do a book, and I started a few books. Even in the '80s, I started a book. But I remember being like a 7-year-old, and I played with a guy in New York, and I think his father might have been the publisher of like
Mm-hmm.
Random House or something, and he had a book. I don't remember what the book was, but we had a dummy book. That's the cover, the hardback cover, but inside there were no pages. They do these dummy books, and we were scribbling in it like we were writing a book, like 7 or 8 or 9 years old. So it was like book was always in my life. My father wrote 2 books, which were medical, and you couldn't even read the titles. But I mean, book was an idea. And I knew that it would always be later, and it was a planetary thing. And I started with when Facebook came out, and I started getting involved in it around 2012, 2013, and I started to post. When you start posting, you start writing. You start thinking in your
Yeah,
thoughts a certain way. And
yeah.
and so around the 2018, so I had done some posts, and I kept them in a file, and then I was in India. I spent winters in India back then, and I was very inspired, and I started writing, and they were getting a little bit more serious. They were 500 to 1,200 word, called them themes, little short stories on the spiritual path. And I wrote a bunch, and I had a neighbor who read them at one time and gave me a couple of editing hints, and I was off and running with those, and I wrote 40 of them that year, and all of a sudden they took on a life of their own, and I spent a year and a half working on them. I ended up the second winter writing 40 more. I thought it was a
Mm-hmm.
second book. And I brought this friend of mine next door. She came into the project a little bit, and we had this idea, and then we got this teaching. We started working with a teacher, and this teaching wasn't directed to us directly, but somebody got the teaching that, interestingly enough, that the quickest way to write the book was to stop writing. It
How
was geared
interesting.
towards them. Wasn't necessarily for everybody, but it was something that made you think. So I stopped writing for 4 years. And when I got back to it, I was given fairly quickly. I had a friend come visit, and he was doing some editing, and I said, "Oh, I've written some stuff," and I sent him a bunch of stuff, and he went to the shortest. So he went back to the
Yeah.
themes, and he started
Mm-hmm.
he started getting me back into the themes, and I thought, "Oh, yeah, maybe that's 4 years later. Yeah, maybe I need to get back into that." And then the title came, and the format came. I tried to organize these themes, and in the year and a half part of the cycle, the first cycle. And there wasn't really a logic, but I ended up, the book is 78 chapters. They're one for each of the tarot cards. It's not really about tarot. You can learn about tarot with it. It's an esoteric. The tarot is a 500-year-old organized system of information. And so each card has a subject. And so without my knowing it, I wrote 85 or 90 themes, and I had one for each of the 78 tarot cards. If I'd planned to write one for each of the 78 tarot cards, I probably wouldn't have written the first one. But without my
Wow.
knowing it, I had written one for each of the 78 cards. And so then the exciting point was when I realized that, then I took the themes I had and I connected them to the tarot cards, and it took a couple of days, and about 85% of them never changed. I had to change about 10 or 12 of them, and a couple moved out
Wow.
of the book and a couple moved into the book, and there was a one shift where I shifted four of
Yes.
them around. This one went to here and that one went to there, and this one went out of the book and that one went in the book. That was my big change. Four of them, one moment that it wasn't right, and then I looked around and then I thought, well, this would be so.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a big, but it was about 85% of the book, and so it was written through me, not from me. It's my experiences,
Yes.
but not my. It was given to me by spirit, and I write something, and then I take a walk, and I get the feedback. And every day,
Yeah.
every word that isn't right, eventually it gets corrected, and I'm better at this. The writing comes easier, and
Yeah.
the confidence is more there, and I've learned to, oh my God, it's never going to end, to realize that it will end and I will get it, and I've done the hard work in order to do that by getting the first book out. I'm working on the second, and I have the clarity now about the third. I was given that last winter, and I think I'll be given the time to finish them, but
Yeah. It came at the exact time, I would say.
yes, the timing has to do with I got the ego out of the
Mhm.
way, that I couldn't have written it from, that if I tried to write it from ego, that it would have been really garbagey, but it would have been, it wouldn't have had the vibration that it has. So I ask you, you said you'd read some of it. I mean, how does it feel to you? What are your impressions? How did it hit you?
I think I identify a lot. I'm a very spiritual person. I am. I always say it, and I'm very, I'm very firm with this. I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual, and I have faith. So when it really hit me because it makes me, it's very peaceful. At least personally, the first, part I think is it gives peace and it makes you reflect a lot. I think that's the message for me. I think that's how I see it. It's not like I'm telling you this. This is my point of view. I think he just raised those questions personally, and I think that's beautiful. It makes people
That
think.
Yeah, that wasn't, I mean, that may be my style and personality, but
Yeah,
that is 50 years on the spiritual path. That was a maturity that, if I'd have written it, not that I would have, but if I had, it would have been, let me tell you a thing or
yeah,
two. But it
yeah.
came out just as an expression, and that was enough. I didn't need to convince anybody. I was just telling a story, and
For your own
each
experiences,
from my own experiences. They're 78 themes. So some of them are my own experiences. Some of them are ancient teachings. Some of them are reflections from clients. Some of them are almost non sequiturs, that they're just creative writing, and they're some of the most, you know, and I write. There's one of them, and I don't know which one it is, but I remember saying, I don't know how this is going to end. I'm only here. I don't know the end. I don't write it with I don't get the
yeah,
end. I just get the
yeah,
flow,
yeah,
and the subject my heart says, oh, this is something I want to share. So I start writing,
yeah,
and I wrote a place, and I said, well, here I am. I don't know how it's going to end. And then it came.
and it's beautiful.
And then in editing, of course, you once you have the end, then you can edit it and kind of make more sense out of it.
And kind of make more sense of it. Yeah, I know it happened with my second book too. But I think that's the beauty of it. I think when we write, I think we do it from our heart, and it's a feeling. At least as an author as well. That's how I see it. And I think it's a beautiful book. I promise. I read a little by little every day. I read like this is a habit I have. I don't read one book at a time. I read
Sure.
like 3, 4 different books at the same time. But I'm a reader, and I'm
I
very
I, th-
into.
I think that what I've heard from people is the ones who take it the deepest, they just read a chapter a day, if you read it again the next day, or you let it sit with it for 2 days or 3 days, that it's the best. I think you can that it has an energy cover to cover. I mean, you can open it, you can pick a card and you can open it and you can get a reading for the day. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
And that's fine to do. But the people that are taking it deeper are reading it cover to cover. And there were things that I felt called to do, that I was told to do, that I felt called to do, that I didn't understand until the tarot came into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
there were things that I labeled and named and things that I didn't really understand, and it was only later on that I understood it. And I'll give you an example. Was that actually it wasn't the tarot. What happened was I ended up, even of the tarot section, it was late in the tarot. I was already working with the book, and the 2 card of the major arcana. If you're familiar with this, if you're not, I'm sorry to anybody out there, but it's called the priestess. I think it's called the priestess, and I felt to call it the yogini. That's the female yogini, and it was the second card. The first card is the Fool, 0. The second card, the zero card is the Fool. Then the 1 card, and then the 2 card is the yogini. And this is very, very deep. And I'm thinking, why is this the second card? This doesn't make any sense. But I got this. Use the word yogini. So then later on, towards the end of this whole process, I'm given to put the major arcana in reverse, to start with the universe at 21 and to end with 0, the Fool.
Oh my
God. And so then the yogini made a total sense, because it wasn't the 3rd card, it was the 3rd from the end.
And then you make the change.
I already made the change, but then I understood the change. We don't trusting is that you do it even though you don't know why. I don't need to know why. In fact, I don't care why.
You made the change and it made sense. It made sense later on.
I made the change and it didn't make any sense
at the time.
But I felt it's strong enough to do it. And then later on, I get given to put the major arcana, the major truths, the first cards, 0 through 21, to put them in reverse order, because I read in a book and it said, well, they go from 0 to 21 and that's the way things are. And I said, well, why the hell is that the way things are? And I thought about it a little bit and I said, well, it could just as easily be reversed. And then it took me, I don't know, a few weeks, a month to say, yeah, that's what I want to do, to whether I pulled the card about it or not, or I just felt that was what I wanted, that's what it wanted me to do. And so I put it in reverse, and then all of a sudden, this one I didn't understand.
Trust
I totally understood.
Sometimes you had to trust the process.
Well, I would suggest all the time, trust the process.
All the time.
All the time, yeah. Letting go of our own ego and our own need and our own sense of intelligence and our own, we know better. That I would suggest let going all of that. But if only when you're ready. You do it by somebody says the restaurant has good food and well, gee, I don't know, but then you go trust it. You go eat there and you trust it, and that's how you start. That's how you work your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can listeners find Indra's Net if they want to find it?
Indra's Net is on Amazon, and I encourage anyone. I would appreciate and love you dearly if you buy the book, and if you feel to leave a review there, that would be wonderful. I'd love to have more reviews, and give it a try there. And we put in 3 chapters. There's 10 or 12 or 15 pages of the book, so you can get a feel for it and see if you like it. The format is, if I may, is just that, because we talked about these themes a lot, but there's more to the format. This is the whole. Indra used to be a book publisher. Indra was a book publisher for 10 years last century, and so I never do anything the simple way. So each chapter, each card has a photo, and then has a caption, and the caption is related to the photo, but it's set up that if the picture wasn't there, the caption still makes sense. And they're a little bit, think about it. You don't really know where you're going, and you don't need to know where you're going, but it kind of primes the pump a little bit. Then you have the theme, and then at the end you have what I call the leveling up. You have I think there's 9 of them. You have the theme we call the experience, and then at the bottom we have and I'm forgetting some of them. There's the lessons on the card, which connects the theme and the tarot card together. You have the exercises. We have 3 exercises on each one. Those are the think about it that you were talking about.
Yeah.
That are open ended and there's no right answer. And then there's the next step. There's the higher octave, the highest expression of the card. Then there's an affirmation, and there's one or two others that I'm not coming up with. But so it's a whole process there. You read the theme, and by the time you get to the bottom and get to the questions, I know when I was editing it, I had to go back and then I'd have to read the theme again, because it flows so good when you read it.
It's amazing. It's very reflective.
That there's more levels to this. I didn't think, it was a nice story. If you're starting out, you can read it, it's a nice story. But then you read it at the end and you go, whoa, there was more there. Let me go back and read it again because they flow so well, I believe.
Yeah.
You got to read it again to kind of stick it with you.
I think it can help the audience tremendously, personally. If someone wants to work with you personally or have a reading, where should they go?
Okay, so you have a website, Indra Rinzler, all one word, .com. You can learn about the readings there. I have a Facebook, if you're interested there. I'm on Instagram, too, Wise Old Fool. I started a TikTok, but haven't done anything with it yet. Indra's Net, A Seeker's Guide. And I have a free offer to any of your listeners, 2 free offers. You email me. You can email me any question. If you have any questions from this, you're welcome to say, if you enjoyed it, say hi. Indra Rinzler.
Indra is very responsive. I will say that.
IndraRinzler@gmail.com. You can write me. So the 2 free offers are your Vedic astrology chart. The astrology chart of Vedic is the astrology of India. It's not a free reading, but I always make a comment or 2 about your chart. So you will get the chart, and I give you a little crib sheet there so that you can kind of understand it a little bit because it's a little bit of a different format. The Vedic astrology isn't that much different than Western astrology, only the chart is cast slightly differently. And the second free offer is that I will send you a 5 or 10 minute Enneagram test in order to figure out there are 9 personality types. One of them is at your core. It's incredibly revealing to find out what it is. The patterning, the strength of the Enneagram is that the patterning is so strong. My clients say, how do you know me so well? Well, I don't know you that well, but I do know the patterning of the Enneagram number. So once we come up with the number, then the patterning is set. And while there are some variations between people, the commonalities are absolutely amazing. It's a teaching. It's about 60 years old. So I will send you a test and then begin to figure out your Enneagram number. That takes 5 or 10 minutes. So just write me at IndraRinzler@gmail.com and ask for either of those. I think I mentioned this, but I just want to say, because one time I forgot to say this, so I want to make sure. So I need 3 pieces of information on the astrology. Your date of birth, place, and time.
Date of birth, place, and time.
Yeah, so I don't need anything for the Enneagram. You'll figure it out from the test. But for the astrology, I obviously need the date of birth, place of birth, and the time. And then I'll send you
I'll make sure all this information is below. And Indra, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, more than 50 years of seeking and learning. I think one of the things I'm taking away from this conversation is that perhaps success isn't necessarily about how many people know who we are, but about knowing who we are ourselves and understanding what we can genuinely contribute while we're here. And thank you to everyone listening. Remember, life isn't defined only by the big milestones. Sometimes there isn't one experiences that change everything. Sometimes 50 years of small experiences, questions, mistakes, discoveries, journeys, and moments that slowly shape who we become. And if today's conversation encouraged you to pause, reflect, and better understand yourself, I hope you'll continue exploring those questions. And sometimes the greatest journey isn't around the world, is the journey inward. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow the podcast, leave a review, and share with someone who would enjoy this conversation as well. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep embracing your own little wild experiences. Thank you.
Thank you.